It could be argued that the Analogue driver's car is something that seems to be in the autumn of its life. The weighting of hydraulically assisted steering, the interactivity of a manual gearbox, the sound and response of a large naturally aspirated engine. These are all sensations that are gradually being phased out in new cars. Some companies retain one or maybe two of these facets, but it is incredibly rare to see them all come together in one car these days.
And this, the Aston Martin V12 Vantage V600. It might just be the last of the breed.
This beautiful car was originally a customer's idea. He commissioned Aston Martin to create a last hurrah, a fantastic celebration of what he saw as one of the final Analogue supercars. Aston liked the idea so much that it asked if a very small run of V600s, 7 coupes and 7 roadsters, could be produced. And this is one of that very rare handful. The V600 is a sort of road-orientated version of the monstrous track-focused GT12. Firstly, they decided to get rid of the wild aero addenda, because I'm not sure that aero is very analogue, and instead let the fluid, muscular Coke bottle shape beneath the sills and wings do the talking. The result is one of the most gorgeous cars I've ever seen. Short, wide, but somehow still achingly pretty. That sculptural bodywork is all carbon fibre, the exposed sections herringboned immaculately. The huge hexagonally holed grille is a subtly waved work of art. And I like the fact that the design of the side vents connects this old Vantage to the new, current generation of the car. The owner of this particular V600 has chosen to have the centre-lock wheels diamond cut, as it neatly brings out the intricacy of their particular design. And beneath the brogued and bulging bonnet lies the GT12's large capacity naturally aspirated V12, kicking out 592 brake horsepower, 416 pounds-foot of torque, and an almighty sound through its titanium exhaust. And of course, crucially, because this is an Analogue road car, the engine is mated not to the GT12's paddle shift gearbox, but a 7-speed dogleg manual.
And the details continue inside the car as well. I mean, every one of the 7 coupes and 7 roadsters will obviously be spec'd purely to each individual owner's desires and whims, so each car will be slightly different. But there are things like these controls here. They might not look particularly special at first glance, but the more you look at them, the more you realise that this is actually threads of carbon fibre wound round to make the beautiful rotary switches. The carbon fibre dash in here as well, then the little V motif right on the centre of the needles. It's all absolutely exquisite.
There seems to be carbon fibre everywhere you look, from small fillets to the huge swathes like the door cards. Other details include the saddlebags behind the seats and a gear lever that feels cool and weighted to the touch thanks to being machined from billet aluminium. I can't say that I often examine air vents that closely, but do so on the V600 and you'll notice that they are leather wrapped.
There's an advertisement for Aston Martin Q. You couldn't get much better. But of course, as beautiful as this car is to look at, it was conceived principally for driving. So what's it like to drive? Well, you've got a wonderful 5.9 litre V12 under the bonnet, naturally aspirated of course, and it sounds utterly glorious through that quad exit titanium exhaust, particularly with the sport button pressed. Wow, that titanium exhaust, what a noise. And then of course we've got the manual gearbox, the 7-speed dogleg manual. Some people have said it's a little bit tricky, and yes, I suppose the thing you have to get used to with this particular dogleg is the fact because there's so many different planes across here, the springing you just have to get used from first, second to third. Of course, once you've used first once you're up and running, you don't have to worry about that, but the springing's perhaps just not quite what you might expect, and it feels quite narrow across the box, but it's a lovely chunky shift, just as it should be for this Analogue car. The fact it's a bit of a challenge to use, it's all part of it.
The V600 shares the GT12's shortened final drive, which is really nice because as a result it feels nicely short geared with closely stacked ratios, which means you get to use the box a lot. Having said that, there is so much torque to lean on that you can almost ignore the dogleg and treat second as first, third as second, etc, etc.
To be honest, whether V12 or V8, this Vantage has long been one of my favourite cars to drive on a good bit of road. It just feels the right size, the balance is absolutely perfect. It's just a wonderful car, and this is absolutely no exception. With all the carbon fibre bodywork, it's lighter than ever for a V12, and yet it's also got more power, so what's not to like?
That delicious torque means it is incredibly easy to steer the V600 from the rear, straightening lines and unwinding lock quickly once you're past an apex. Through quicker bends it feels beautifully balanced, and although it's still best to be just a little bit patient getting the V12's heavier nose into the tighter corners, that distinctively talkative steering lets you know just how hard to work the front tyres. And that's one of the hallmarks of an Analogue car, that it is fun and interactive at any speed, fast or slow.
Analogue is all about feel, whether it's through the brake pedal, and Aston has always done some of the best carbon brakes for feel, or whether it's just about the richness of the experience, the connection between you and the car the road. It's records as opposed to CDs or downloads. It's film as opposed to digital images. It's wool instead of nylon. Now, of course, the more you think about this, the more I suppose it's a question of, well, where does Analogue begin and end? Somebody used to driving a 1920s Bentley would probably bemoan synchromesh on the gear shift. Then you've got things like we have on this car, a sports button, ESP, adaptive dampers. I always like a passive setup in terms of suspension for really pure Analogue. Power assisted steering is another one. Where does it end? Where do you draw the line in terms of Analogue and digital? Feel and disconnect.
It's a hard thing to be clear-cut about, and certainly I'm not about to say that every current or future car is or will be devoid of feel, interactivity and some Analogue characteristics. The McLaren 600 LT, the Ferrari 812 Superfast, the 991 GT2 RS, all wonderful, thrilling, tactile cars. But it definitely feels like this generation of car, the one represented by the V600, the one that included the 997 generation 911, the V8 BMW M3, the Zonda, the last manual Ferraris. That might just have marked, well, something of a watershed.
Whether they will prove to be also a high watermark, only time will tell. But I think this is a fitting tribute.
Thank you very much to the owner of this V600 for letting us drive and film it. If you would like to see more photos of the car, then simply check out @TheZenCarDriver on Instagram, via the link below. Equally, if you'd like to see a film of another rare and very Analogue Aston Martin, then just click on the link to the left. And please, if you haven't already, do subscribe to the Carfection channel.